the UFC judges. We all have an opinion on them, just like arseholes, we've all got one. Also like arseholes, nothing positive comes out. Yet everyone can agree on having a shitty opinion about them. Why is this the case? Are the UFC bribing officials? Are a cult of aliens to blame? Or are the judges just bad at their jobs? Well, I'm going to try and answer that question today. Not the alien parts though, I'm not going to waste my time on that bullshit. I've broken this video into 4 parts. Part 1, what are the UFC scoring criteria? Part 2, an example of a controversial fight. Part 3, is there a bias to fighters? / is it rigged? And finally, number 4, alternatives. Before I get into all that, I want to say first that the UFC don't make the rules. A lot of people point the finger at the UFC whenever there's a bad call. However, they are only following the rules made by the Association of Boxing Commissions. UFC.com says, the framework of the unified rules of MMA.
You cost us thousands of dollars because you can't read.
The framework of the unified rules of MMA was proposed and agreed upon by the various athletic commissions in the 2000s and unanimously adopted by the Associations of Boxing Commissions, ABC for short, on July 30th, 2009. With that said, let's take a look at the rules that seem to make the UFC judges' lives a nightmare for a few hours most Saturday nights. Something that surprised me upon first looking at the rules is that a 10-10 round is actually an official score. I thought there was a myth, however, it's not only a rule, it's on the first bloody page. Just before any of you lot think about throwing 10-10s around like it's going out of style, it states this. A 10-10 round in MMA is when both fighters have competed for whatever duration of time in the round, and there is no difference or advantage between either fighter. A 10-10 round in MMA should be extremely rare and is not scored to be used as an excuse by a judge but cannot assess the difference in a round. So that would rule out any of the Sean Strickland vs Jared Cannonier rounds being a 10-10. However, 10-10s aren't unheard of, and actually the most recent 10-10 round was given on the undercard of Tai Tuivasa vs Cyril Gane in 2022. And I've highlighted other notable fights including all 3 judges in the Owen St. Preux vs Jan Vellante fight given the 3rd round a 10-10. Now we'll see the scoring priority. Number 1, effective grappling and striking. Number 2, effective aggression. And number 3, fighting area control. It also says the next 2 criteria must be treated as a backup and only used when effective striking / grappling is 100% equal for the round. So when you sat down scoring the fight is literally only effective grappling and striking you can judge it on, unless you don't see a winner where you would go down the list to the 2nd and 3rd and so forth. I recommend you all look at the rules. Everyone should know how to score the fight, and you can make yourself seem like a bit of a fucking nerd to anybody around you. You could get beat up as well. That's a good little thing. Tell everyone how much you know the rules, and we'll see how long you last in the gym. I'm going to look at other notable parts of this, so I'm not going to be reading the full fucking document off, okay? Including what makes a 10-7 round. A 10-7 round in MMA is when a fighter completely overwhelms their opponent in effective striking / or grappling, and a stoppage is warranted. A 10-7 round in MMA is a score that judges will rarely give. It takes both overwhelming dominance of the round, but also significant impact that, at times, cause the judge to consider that the fight could be stopped. Judges shall look for multiple impactful blows or knockdowns that diminishes the fighter and / or grappling maneuvers that place the fighter in a dominant situation with impact being inflicted but visibly diminishes the fighter's ability to compete. The only example of a 10-7 in the UFC, at least to my knowledge, is Josh Emmett vs Felipe Orantes, where one of the judges gave the first round a 10-7. To Josh Emmett, obviously. Something very confusing is on the fouls list, however. Most seem very reasonable. At the end though, it shows removed fouls. Throwing in the towel during competition. What the fuck? Why on earth was this a conversation? And not just that it was a conversation, but a group of people thought that it was wrong for the corner to throw the towel in when they believe their fighter should be pulled out the action. They also say this: a fighter's corner, at the commission's discretion, should have the option to retire his fighter in the quickest and most effective manner possible during competition. A corner person, having worked alongside a fighter, may recognise and accept what their fighter's capabilities are from past experience. It makes sense from a safety perspective to allow a corner to retire the fighter if this is a consideration that debris in the form of a towel entering the ring or cage may contribute to a disruption or confusion in the contest, but coloured towels or special towels might be consideration to be used. Alright, enough said about this, let's go on to the second chapter. I won't be going as far back as Bas Rutten versus Kevin Randleman, only really focusing on the more recent fights. Also, I'm not saying that this is going to be the most controversial fight that I'm reviewing, so if it's not a Johnny Hendricks versus GSP or a Gus versus Jon Jones 1, this isn't because I don't think it's a robbery or that it's debatable, it's because I don't want to be sat here all day watching fucking robberies. So I picked a controversial fight from the last year at random. The fight that was chosen was Val versus Santos. So with that said, let's look over the fight. Round 1. Val starts off winning on the feet, countering well, putting in more effort and is defensively sound. Val also controlled Santos on the cage for 1 minute 28 seconds. Val attempted a takedown, however Santos got the advantage. Santos takes the back and attempts a few rear naked chokes, however does not significantly threaten. Santos focuses on controlling the hands while Val strikes. The round ends. Val landed 10 significant strikes to Santos's 5, and landed 35 strikes in total to Santos's 12 strikes in total. Val spent 1 minute 28 seconds controlling on the cage, while Santos spent 1 minute 51 seconds controlling on the ground. As seen by the rules, it says effective grappling and striking shall be considered the first priority for round assessment. Aggressiveness is plan B and should not be considered unless the judge does not see any advantages in the effective grappling and striking realm. Cage/ring control, plan C, should only be needed when all other criteria are 100% even for both competitors. Just in case, I will say who I think would at each criteria. Effective grappling and striking, Val, since she was more effective on the feet, controlled on the cage, and was even quite effective on the bottom. Effective aggression would go to Val for the point above, and fighting area control would go to Santos for holding the position for around about 2 minutes. Obviously I don't think this is warranted for a 10-10 round, however you may see it differently, so I'm going to give it a 10-9 to Val. Round 2. Val comes out throwing combinations and being aggressive. Santos clinches Val and puts her up against the cage. Santos gets the takedown. Val threatens a submission, however nothing of value comes from it. The fighters are stood up, Val takes Santos down, they both fight for the dominant position, Santos winds up on top. The round ends. Valentina landed more significant strikes, 7 to Santos's 4, 64 strikes for Val and 31 to Santos overall. Santos had 3 minutes and 40 seconds control time to Val's 9 seconds. Effective grappling and striking, I would give this to Santos. Even with Val being better on the feet, the fight was largely on the ground. Val landed more in these positions, however Santos was clearly in the dominant position the whole time and wasn't under any real threat. Effective aggression would go to Val. Val was more aggressive on the feet and more active on the ground, attempting a submission. Fighting area control goes to Santos for the reasons already stated. 10-9 Santos. Round 3. Santos throws combinations of Val, however is counted. After some even striking, Val slips a strike and gets the takedown on Santos, however she immediately gets up. Val tries another takedown, however Santos wins the clinch and holds Val up against the cage. Santos takes Val down, getting her back. Santos tries a rear naked choke, however is not able to get under the chin. The round ends. Valentina had 17 significant strikes to Santos's 4, with 42 in total for Val and 10 in total for Santos. Santos got the only takedown in the round, Val's not counting for some reason. Santos had 2 minutes and 21 seconds of control time, Val had 2 seconds. Effective striking and grappling, I give to Santos. Once again, Valentina landed more and was just that little bit better on the feet. Santos though dominated on the ground, taking her back and threatened a submission. Effective aggression will go to Santos. She made the greatest attempt to finish the fight, trying to get her arm under Val's chin. I feel this one was a lot closer of a submission attempt compared to round 1's. Fight and area control. Santos. Santos dictated where the fight went almost the whole time, or at least when it mattered. 10-9 Santos. Round 4. Val is the aggressor, however striking is even. Val lands a head kick, and time is called for a low blow. Val is landing cleaner shots. Val stays one step ahead of Santos in the striking. Santos gets a late takedown and finishes up on top. In round 4, Valentina landed 29 significant strikes to Santos's 28. In total, Val had 37, Santos 33. Santos had the only takedown in the round, staying on top for 17 seconds in the position before the round ended. Effective striking/grappling. Val. She had the higher output and landed the more meaningful strikes, with Santos's takedown coming too late in the round. Effective aggression. Val. Val landed the more damaging shots and was pushing the pace. Fight and area control. Val. I give her this for pushing the pace for the largest part of the round. 10-9 Val. Round 5. Val is winning on the feet until Santos attempts a clinch. Val, however, takes down Santos in this exchange, but suddenly ends up in the less dominant position. Valentina tries to escape but gives up her back. Santos seems to be looking for a rear naked choke. Valentina uses this to escape back to her feet. Val gets a takedown, this time remaining on top. Valentina ends the round on top. The stats say that Valentina landed 14 significant strikes to Santos's 11. Valentina had 52 strikes in total, Santos had 42 strikes in total. Val got 2 takedowns, however only one benefited her. Finally, Valentina had 2 minutes and 36 seconds in control time to Santos's 40 seconds. The final round I am giving effective striking and grappling to Valentina. She was winning on the feet and more importantly did better on the ground, example being 2 minutes and 36 control time. Effective aggression I'll give to Valentina. The takedown at the end was important for her, especially paired with the striking. And fighting area control goes to Val. She determined where the fight went, even when it didn't benefit her. Valentina's wits to get to the feet compared to Santos's accepting being on the bottom won her the round. 10-9 Val. Now that we've finished the fight, let's look at the official decision.
Howard Hughes scores the contest. 48-47, Shevchenko. David Lethelby scores it. 48-47, Santos. And Clemens Werner scores the contest. 49-46 for the winner by split decision, and still the...
So, Judge 1 and 2 gave the first round to Santos, Judge 3 being the exception. Judge 1 and 3 gave the second round to Valentina. The third round was a clean sweep for Santos, and all 3 judges gave the last 2 rounds to Santos. There's 2 reasons why I think this is considered a robbery, or at least a controversial fight. The first is how weird the scorecards were. Comparing my scorecard to the 3 Stooges at ringside, you can see that we are all over the place. The only round scored the same between us is round 3, 4 and 5, so they are undebatable here. It's rounds 1 and 2 that seem to be the problem. Howie's card left me a bit confused. The other 2 I understand. I could see the logic in giving Val both rounds and Santos both rounds. At least based on how I judged the fights, these rounds seem to contradict each other. Valentina was a lot more effective in round 1 than she was round 2, and what made Santos so effective in round 1, she excelled at in round 2. The round 2 stats clearly favour Santos, at least compared with round 1. With all of that said, I feel that fans would disagree with how the judges scored the contest, and people would think they're incompetent or unreliable, but I genuinely think that by following the rules, my card is the correct picked one. The second is the commentary. This has been brought up many times, mainly in Izzy fights, where people feel that the team behind the mics are injecting their opinion a little too much into the fight. We have a few examples of it here. At the end of round 3, Michael Bisping says about Santos, she could be 3 rounds up, and DC says, I would feel confident in scoring it that way. Bisping also says about Valentina in round 4, she knows she's behind, so she's looking for a finish. As well as that, Bisping said, does Shevchenko need a stoppage to win? Finally, in round 5, Bisping says, Santos won round 1 and 2 without a doubt. Then he says something about round 3 that I didn't quite pick up on. DC then adds that Santos probably won round 3. Bisping ironically says, we're not here to judge. The thing is, they are judging and they are very confident about doing it. I could see how someone watching the fight could be uncertain about the first or second round, but hearing Cormier and Bisping's confidence that Santos won the first 3 rounds without a doubt could help make their mind up whilst listening, discarding any thought of Valentina winning any of the first 3 rounds. I've pulled up some high profile controversial fights since 2020 and I've highlighted the fighter I think makes the most sense for the UFC to want to win. Someone you may say should be highlighted would be Holloway or Ngannou. First of all, Holloway may be a fan favourite, but I don't think the UFC would have been mad about him losing to Volkanovski, so I left it even. The second is Ngannou. For as marketable as Ngannou is, it seems like he's a pain in the arse for the UFC. Him publicly stating that he isn't paid enough and can't afford coaching, and according to him being sent legal threats just before his title fight with Gane. Also, Dana White not putting the belt around Ngannou was pretty funny. So I think Cyril Gane was definitely the guy they were rooting for. You may pick up on a pattern, but when it goes to a decision, the guy that the UFC wants to win will most likely win. An example of this is when Paddy beat Jared Gordon. I knew Paddy won that fight, not because he did anything better than Gordon. I actually think that he lost 2 of the rounds. I just had this instinctive feeling that Paddy was going to get the decision unjustly. Do I think Dana White and co are risking prison time to make Paddy or Macy Barber win their fight? Obviously not. The only way the UFC could pull something like this off is by paying the fighters to lose, and even then I think we would have heard about it by now from more respectable fighters. Another possibility is that in judging you need to take in marketability, just like the media have to do with the rankings. This is pure speculation of course, and I don't think the UFC are fixing fights. It doesn't make a lot of sense for them to do so. I personally think there's no evidence of rigging the fights, and a good number of examples show fights that don't go in the way of the UFC. The only example of a very suspicious fight of recent is Jon Jones versus Dominic Reyes, or Paddy Gordon. I also think Big John McCarthy said it best about the Paddy fight, referring to one of the judges. My son was one of the judges. He asked me and I said, you got it wrong. I thought Jared Gordon won 29-28. This can happen when you're getting the crowd responding to every time Paddy does something. There's times when you're not seeing the angle, but you're hearing the reaction of the crowd, and it's an influencer. And I think they got influenced by what the crowd was into. In this chapter, I'm going to be looking at the MMA Fighting's article called What Can Be Done with MMA Scoring. I recommend you check out this article yourself. I'm only going to go over 2 of the suggestions that was made. First being half-point system. They describe this by saying, this would be to change the scoring system. A close round will become a 10-9.5 round. A normal round win is a 10-9, as it is now. A 10-8.5 round is where someone wins decisively, but not quite strong enough for what would be considered a 10-8 round. A 10-8 remains the same. I personally feel this won't help with the scoring of rounds, and I actually think it would give fans and judges more headaches than it does now. I can see the logic in it. However, I feel this would also cause more controversy. People would debate about what makes a 10-9.5 and a 10-9 round. I know of a couple of fights that it would be difficult to make a distinction between the two. Also, if a fighter loses due to a 0.5 difference, I could see a lot of MMA fans being a bit annoyed, especially if they don't think that it goes that way. The second is open scoring. Once again, as described, no matter what criteria is used, at the end of a round the scores are made public. I can see it now. It's the O2 Arena. Paddy just lost a standard 10-9 round. Judge 1 stands up and raises his winner of the round, Drew Dober. The crowd goes crazy and Paddy in his corner are complaining. The crowd are booing the judge. Judge 2 then hesitantly stands up, shakily raising the winner of the round, Drew Dober. At this point the crowd is deafening and maybe a few beer cups is being thrown in his direction. Judge 3 then takes an extended break, seemingly adjusting his scorecard. As he stands up, revealing Paddy as the winner of the round, the crowd cheer. Paddy in his corner are happy, and you have a disappointed Drew Dober whose complaints are being deafened out by the crowd. This is a very realistic outcome to open scoring. I've actually seen a lot of support from this in the MMA community. However, I feel this is the craziest of them all, and could be the most destructive as well. And I didn't even go into the example of the fighter who is 4 rounds down and storms off before the 5th, giving an unsatisfying ending to a pay-per-view card. Once again, I'll link it in the description of that article. It actually goes over the strengths and weaknesses themselves. I just wanted to riff on my own shit, so yeah. Now we're gonna go on to One Championship scoring. One Championship is the closest competitor to the UFC at present. As far as fighters, unlike Bellator and Ryzen, I can actually see One Championship fighters being able to beat top UFC fighters, especially in the women's division, where in total I think they have the better female fighters. More importantly, they have different rules and weight classes. For obvious reasons though, I'm only going to be focusing on the rules and the judging. On One Championship's website they say, decision wins. In the event that the bout goes the distance, it will go to the judge's decision. The 3 judges will score the bout in its entirety, not round by round. Judges will utilise the one judging criteria in describing order of importance to determine the winner of the bout. One judging criteria: near knockout / near submission, damage brackets internal, accumulated, superficial, striking combinations and cage / ring generalship brackets ground control and superior positioning, entered takedowns or takedown defense, aggression. Criteria wise, it's not crazy different to the UFC's, which is number 1, effective grappling and striking, number 2, effective aggression, and number 3, fighting area control. I feel one has it right here. The one criteria seems to be more defined than the UFC's, which seems kind of vague at times. Also, being able to count takedown defense is a big thing, at least as I see it. In the UFC you don't get scored on defense, and I think that's kind of silly. We could see how this works on a scorecard. In this instance, Lee versus Jing Niam, a fight I saw live, not in person, and if basing it on a 5-round, 10-9 scoring, I felt Lee would have won that. However, in the 1 scoring, I saw the fight going to Nam, who rightfully won the fight. It shows the criteria priorities on the judge's scorecard, something that the UFC scorecard should do. It has an advantage section on it, and finally, a degree of advantage. Now I'm going to let you decide for yourself on what scoring criteria is better. Something else that I like about One Championship is that they allow grounded knees. Knees would be huge if they were implemented in the UFC. And I know that it could change at least one weight class. Bantamweight. I find the rules of not being able to knee a grounded opponent to be another one of those more questionable rules. Aljo is a great example of this. In both fights with Jan, he did the stalling technique, where he's in a no man's land type position, where Jan can't effectively strike him without getting tucked down, and Aljo can't get the takedown unless Jan's stupid. Or, Jan could just knee him and get DQ'd, that's, another option, but he would never do that. It was no surprise to see him use the same technique in the second fight to stall the action when he was tired, and picking up the decision win. This makes the fight a lot riskier for time wasters like that, and it gives the strikers an equalising factor in the grappling exchanges with wrestlers. Another rule that's probably a lot better is 12 to 6 elbows is no longer prohibited. The fact that this rule was made by someone that doesn't know how MMA, or at least MMA striking, works, and that has stuck around for this long, is mind-blowing. that has literally changed the history of the sport, from Jon Jones getting DQ'd for breaking the nonsense rule, being his only official loss, all the way to Eddie Alvarez losing the dominant position and getting the fight stood up so he can get finished and preventing him from dethroning Khabib, or at least that's what he says would have happened. So that's one thing the UFC could do, I suppose, express that they want to change their rules to the one championship rule set. I realise commissions would object to this, wanting to keep the more boxing based scoring, and if they change the rules to the one championship rule set, I could see a lot of the commissions threatening to not sanction fights and probably even doing so. However, this could bring about more MMA based commissions to rule over the sport rather than ones that are literally boxing commissions. Kind of like when King Henry VIII dissolved the Catholic Church's rule in the country and implemented the Church of England so he could leave his wife to make his side chick his main bitch. Sorry, I just had to bring Tudor history into this. You don't know how long I've been holding this urge in. So I know over the course of this video you have all come to respect me as an intellectual mind, and maybe even a father you never had. And I know you're asking, what do you want to happen to the sport? Well, personally for me, I want to keep the 10-9 scoring system. I actually prefer judging the fights by the round, and I feel that the 10-9 has a proven track record of working. What I have a problem with is how a fight is scored, not the scoring itself. Instead of having a plan A, B and C for judging, I think they should implement one championship's criteria, since it's superior, and not having to go from an A to a B and so forth. Obviously I know damage and effective striking mean a lot more than control time, but to disregard control time entirely is a bit stupid. Also, I'd want to remove some of the silly rules, like the 12-6 and no grounded knees. So, in conclusion, do the UFC need to fix judging? The short answer is no, the long answer is yes. Over the last few years, the calls from fans for changes to be made to the judging/scoring has grown quite a bit, with many fans and even employees like Jon Anik calling for changes to be made. It seems the UFC won't fix the problem until it is affecting them significantly. And for as much as I understand that they don't make the rules, they sure have influence as the largest MMA organisation on the planet. They may get away with a few more years of not changing anything and ignoring the glaring problems with how the rules are implemented. However, it's only a matter of time until a few high-profile robberies come in a close time frame to one another and fan outcry forces the UFC top dogs to address the situation and take action. So, that's the end of the video. You may have picked up on it, but I do have a cold. I am a flu survivor, so if you can thank me for my service in the comments, that would be greatly appreciated. And if you've got any suggestions on what the UFC should do, or if you feel I've missed anything, please let me know. Thank you for watching.